Operator. Is this thing on? Hello, son.
Hello,
I hope you're
Carlos.
I hope you're enjoying this Labor Day weekend.
I am indeed, although
I,
it's weirdly rainy here.
I have decided to talk into the microphone as if I am an NPR host, and my goal is to put you to sleep while you are driving to work. Um, you know, it's tough being an F1 fan and F1 podcaster on Labor Day weekend here in America because that's also the start of college football season. I was at a fun college football game. Our European friends still refuse to believe or simply cannot fathom that you will have a university with 40,000 students and a football game where over 100,000 show up every week. But I was there. It happened. And that's sort of like our historic tracks like Monza, Monaco, Silverstone. We've got the college football stadiums. I think that's our sort of sports history that's gone back for generations. Are you ready to go, son?
I am ready to go.
Hello, welcome to Hard Compound, the American take on Formula One. We just finished watching the Italian Grand Prix at the historic Monza track, the Temple of Speed, as some call it. At least the Sky Sports pundits call it that. It was fast. It's a short track. It's fun to watch. Guess what? Max broke the record, most consecutive wins. But Ferrari put up a fight. They didn't just put up a fight with Max and Red Bull. They put up a fight with each other, which was even more fun, I think. Patrick, son, can I get your take on the Italian Grand Prix?
Yeah, the Italian Grand Prix was exciting. I mean, one of the best races of the season. Finally, it seemed like a team wanted to compete against Red Bull. Took it to them in qualifying and really put in great performances. I think everyone was pretty much aware Red Bull had the race day pace, but that didn't stop Carlos and Charles from really fighting against Max, against Sergio, and against each other. I mean, they each wanted that last podium spot. And to hear the Italian Ferrari crowd cheering for them. It was a good race. It was fun. Lots of on-track battles. People going off. There's a lot of sort of chaos happening. One of the most exciting, most fun races that we've had this season.
I completely understand why some people say, it's boring if Max wins every race. It's boring if Red Bull wins every race. I mean, I know so many who thought it was boring. Mercedes won every race practically year after year after year. There was 1 year Vettel and Ferrari put up a fight. Lewis won almost every race, and those he didn't, they went to Bottas. But even if we have our favorites, if we're just a huge Mercedes fan and we're a huge Lewis fan, for example, we want them to win and win all the time, but they just punch it in at the last moment. It's like watching football. You want your team to win, but just that Hail Mary pass or the running back just crosses the goal line when the two lines are just battling for every square inch. On the other hand, it is fun watching history being made. I mean, Max with 10 in a row, Red Bull with 15 wins. This is, and who knows when this streak will end. I mean, this is like watching DiMaggio, he's now, 40 games in a row, for example, and he'll get to 56. We now know that, but sort of like, it's like we're watching, this is history. This is pretty incredible to see. But I can sympathize with those who sort of want them to want their team to win to want Red Bull to lose, but I do love watching history being made. That said, just like you were saying, I mean, this was a fun race. Ferrari was fighting out with each other. Lewis once again gets the elbows out. Nobody gets the elbows out, like I said, like Lewis Hamilton, and he usually does it in a way that he's not punished much for it. He was given a 5-second penalty. It didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but that was a fun one. And you know, it's also fun watching what some of these young guys can do. I mean, Ricardo finally got his chance again after getting booted from McLaren, but then he gets injured. They put in the young guy, Liam Lawson, and he's doing great. And so there's a lot of fun stuff to see that's going on here. Um, you know, Somehow Alonso, the old man Alonso, gets points race after race after race, and he's in a brick. That Aston is just not progressing. And Stroll, at some point, Stroll, I think, might leave. His dad owns the team. He's not going to get fired. But at some point, I think it's like, look, we all can see that, we might need a real driver in here. So there's lots of storylines happening.
Yeah, I mean, lots of crazy stuff is happening. Tons of stuff surrounding Stroll, and what his future holds. History continuing to be made. Red Bull is needing to buy a new trophy cabinet to fit all of their trophies that they're racking up constantly. Hamilton and Russell, still at Mercedes and will be for a little while now. These two are sort of locked in a tight battle with each other. And, if we're seeing the two Ferrari drivers in Monza go at it, those two Mercedes drivers are at some point going to get into it.
We've been waiting for that. Yeah, we've been waiting for Carlos and Charles. They've always said the right things, but we've been waiting for them. And like you said, a bit of good news for Mercedes was they re-signed George and Lewis for 2 years through 2025. George outraced Lewis, I felt, last year. I think Lewis eclipsed him by the end of the year. I think the new car, the new regs kind of threw Lewis off a bit. But George was at least his equal. George has had, I think, at least 2 DNFs this year that were not his fault, but he's still hanging with Lewis. In 24 and 25, we are going to get some fun battles. I think possibly the equal of Lewis and Rosberg from many years ago. So that's another great story. I also just think, we're just sort of watching with the new regs, the new car regulations, the new cost cap in Formula One, that it's just a great time to see how this sport is radically evolving. I mean, look at all these young guys we've got there. Max winning everything, but we have George at Mercedes, Lando and Oscar Piastri at McLaren. Oscar, I think, might still be a teenager. Liam Lawson stepping in. We've got the American Logan Sargent. There's just so much fun happening in F1 right now.
Tons of exciting things, tons of young guys. They're sort of ushering in a sort of a new age. I mean, you've referred to it in the past, in a couple of seasons. It's very likely we only have one world champion on the grid in Max Verstappen. But to see
by the time Lewis and Alonso retires, right?
Yeah, but to see how many young guys, how much talent is flooding into the sport, and just the way that they're able to drive the car and to compete and fight, and oftentimes punch above their weight class. I think we've seen Alex Albon, especially since the break, really come in and put in some really exceptional performances. So it's a fun time. It's a good time for new fans to get into the sport, I think, and to choose a team or a driver to support regularly. And I think it's been a really exciting time, and I think if this is the way the sport keeps progressing over the next few years, it's going to be that much more exciting and that much more popular.
Yeah, I think with the cost cap sort of making things more competitive, that just takes a while to work through the system, but it will happen. You know, you can't keep all the top people in one crew, in one garage, in one organization. They'll start getting poached. It's like, like I said, here at Labor Day weekend, we started college football. The top offensive coordinators will get poached, the top defensive coordinators. Students, athletes can transfer now to other teams. We're going to start seeing that. We're seeing these young guys who have been sort of immersed in Formula One and karting and racing their whole life. And in downtime, they now have extraordinarily realistic simulations that they can practice on. So the skill level keeps increasing. I do think you're right, because as I've said it before, in a couple years, Max quite likely will be the only world champion on the grid. And then who's going to challenge him? Because it won't be Alonso or Hamilton. That's going to be fun. Watching what Alex Albon is doing in that Williams, that's great to see. Why don't you give me your top 5 though for the Italian Grand Prix, Patrick?
My top 5 I think is pretty straightforward. We saw a lot of really good and exciting racing. I have to start out my top 5 with both of the Ferrari drivers. They gave us some incredible drives. Just the sheer desire to not just podium, but to try to win the race. Carlos Sainz did not back down from Verstappen or Perez, or his teammate Leclerc, even when he was on. His tires were just totally gone off. So I have Carlos Sainz as my top driver of the day, by virtue of his pole and then, finishing ahead of Leclerc on the podium. But right behind him, I do have Charles Leclerc. Just great drives from both of them, really pushing hard. We're really the only two that put up even a bit of a fight against the Red Bull drivers. This is their home race. They wanted to win it. They wanted to at least podium. I think they showed up very well, and it was clear that the fans in Monza really appreciated both of those drivers. Then I have the world champion, the winner of this race, 10 in a row, Max Verstappen. Just keeps putting in the performances. Not a whole lot to say, just better than everybody else. And then I have Alex Albon in that Williams. Just keeps grinding out, really working hard, finishing well above where he probably is expected to. Had a really good qualifying performance, held off Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri for a number of laps, and really was actually quite close to Hamilton, especially given that 5-second penalty that he had. So was a good performance from Albon. And then finally, as you mentioned earlier, Liam Lawson in his second ever F1 race, coming, just a couple seconds from getting his first points or point in Formula One. It would have been nice to see what his teammate Yuki was capable of this weekend, at least to, kind of give a reference for Lawson. But really, overall, a great performance. Over the last two races, it seems like he's outcompeted fellow rookie Logan Sargent in a similar or even worse car. So I think really, really well done for him.
It was unfortunate for Yuki, and especially given how woeful AlphaTauri season has been this year, because they look like they might be a little bit better for Monza. Plus, that track, the speed, turns, how it can get all bunched up. That would have been that's perfect environment for Yuki swearing. We missed out on some great radio messages from Yuki at Monza. But you mentioned Liam Lawson, only his second race. And remember, this isn't the second race of the season. He had to jump into that car last Friday. He's basically had 2 F1 races while being employed as an F1 driver for 10 days. This is pretty amazing what he's doing. And I got to tell you, if I were Daniel Ricciardo, I'd be trying to rush my rehab. Ricciardo got booted from McLaren, and he deserved it. So he was just looking for a way back. And fairly or not, Red Bull and AlphaTauri pulled the plug on Nick DeVry. Barely, 10 races into the season. Daniel gets injured. He's out. Now I hear he may not race until the very last race or the penultimate race of the season. Or that's when he'll be available, they think.
Mm-hmm.
I'd keep Liam. I mean, you don't want to sort of lose your job to an injury, but Liam is a young guy who's just stepped in and doing some great stuff. Who do you have on the virtual podium? So on the actual podium, it was Max, Sergio, and Carlos. What about on the virtual podium, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, virtual podium, it's hard when you're in Italy at Monza to give it to anyone or anything other than the Tifosi, that Ferrari crowd. They always show up for Ferrari and are, pretty frequently disappointed. This year, they came in droves. Ferrari put on a show for them, came really close to, another sort of historic win. But, all the while supporting their drivers and their team. It was a good, fun scene to watch. You could kind of feel the energy at the track the whole weekend. It was a lot of fun to see them. So the Tifosi naturally is on my virtual podium.
Nice. They certainly deserve it. And it speaks to their passion and their sort of legitimate, ongoing, very real passion for Ferrari and the team. It doesn't just go away because, they're not winning. And I think it speaks to their passion in that Carlos and Charles and the whole team really did try to do everything they could to win. So that Tifosi certainly deserves to be on the virtual podium. I'm going to put 3. Number 1 is Monza, the track. I mean, that might be, as F1 changes, as it goes more global, more American, bigger, we're going to lose some of our past. Monza might be the most historic track after, say, Monaco and the Indy 500. And it looked good, and it put on a show. So I'm going to put Monza, the track, up there. Next, Alonso. This is a bit of a cheat. He did not make the podium, though it's going to be tough to do that in that Aston Martin. Speaking of records, Max wasn't the only one who got a record. Alonso, 20,000 laps in F1. No one else has done that. That's pretty amazing. And the third, and I think this was underlooked, his name is Bradley Lord. He's the Mercedes pit crew staffer. and he's at the pit wall, and he was speaking with Sky Sports. And when they had that sort of aborted formation lap because of Yuki's car, he gave some really great, insightful information about the sport, about getting ready, fuel, tires, how long the race can go, strategy, setup, all kinds of stuff, in just like a few minutes. So Bradley Lord, Mercedes pit wall communication staffer, I'm putting him up on the virtual podium.
Nice. All good.
Switching to the soft compound. Patrick, I believe there are 8 races remaining and 3 sprints. Will Red Bull win everything this year?
Just for the sake of hoping, I'm going to say no. I think at some point there's going to be a driver, a team that pulls a rabbit out of the hat. It stops the train from rolling, even for just a brief moment. I think Red Bull is not going to win every single event this season. If they do, I mean, that's like just that's history, right? Put an asterisk next to this season. That's a trivia question for future generations.
Yeah, there's no more human failing, or maybe failing is the completely wrong word. No more human act than wanting to throw a wrench in the machine, of standing in the way of progress, of slowing it down. And it's almost as if it's innate to our being. So I can almost see, even inside the Red Bull crew, inside the Red Bull paddock, the best team in Formula One, of just some ridiculous screw up that prevents them from winning everything. Now, what about finishing second? So I believe Mercedes is well up on Ferrari, up by 45 points. Is there a chance in these remaining 8 races and 3 sprints that Ferrari can take P2?
I mean, there's a chance. I don't think it will happen. I think Ferrari very likely, had planned this for Monza. They planned sort of their perfect setup for Monza. I don't believe that their car is capable of outcompeting Mercedes for the rest of the season on all the tracks in F1 are so different from week to week, or race to race. It's one of the most interesting and compelling things about the sport. And the teams, the drivers, they have to prepare themselves in the cars differently for every single race. And for this race in particular, Ferrari had a good setup. They knew what they wanted to do, really took the fight to Red Bull and kind of blew Mercedes out of the way. I don't believe that will happen really at any other track this season. I think Mercedes will likely take P2 in the Constructors' Championship.
What about P2 in the Driver Championship? So right now, Perez in the Red Bull, the best car on the grid, is up 49 over Alonso. Lewis Hamilton is just a hair behind Alonso. I think Lewis Hamilton will wind up in third because I think Alonso is just not going to. He's in the Aston, and the Aston is just not going to be able to hang with the Mercedes. Not 8 races, not with 8 more races to go, 3 sprints. But do either of them, Lewis or Alonso, have a legit shot at taking P2 in the driver standings? Driver championship.
No. Uh, yeah, I think Perez probably has sorted out a lot of his troubles at this point in the season. He was so poor for pretty much the first half of the season, and yet was P2 for pretty much the entire thing. It's going to be really, really challenging for Hamilton or Alonso to find a way to get more points at plus 49 to 50 um, that over Perez by the end of the season in the few races that remain.
Yeah, I mean the Red Bull is so fast and reliable.
Yeah,
That's a tough
the Red
ask.
Bull's just it's just so much better than the other cars out there. It's really unlikely that Perez sort of falters so hard that that he opens the door for Alonso and Hamilton.
Now, here's a tougher question. Will Lewis Hamilton or Fernando Alonso ever win an F race again?
I'm going to go with yes. I think both of them will each win a race.
Wow, that would be great to see. Now, let's ask the stewards. 4 open seats, I believe, for 2024. Zhou at Alfa Romeo, Yuki and Daniel Ricciardo at AlphaTauri, and Logan Sargent at Williams. Who do we think will not be back, Patrick? You're the steward in this case.
I think of those 4, Yuki is the only one that will retain his seat.
Wow. See, I think Yuki will, and I don't want to say he deserves it. I don't see AlphaTauri having anyone better. Daniel Ricciardo, I think, he injured his hand and that was it. He got another chance and it was unfortunate. But I think Liam Lawson is going to be a better long-term solution. So I'm with you. I think Yuki will remain. Daniel will be out. Zhou, F1 is hard. I think everyone hoped for the best for Zhou, the first Chinese driver with a least permanent contract in F1. And I don't know, he just hasn't been showing anything. And then unfortunately, I don't think Logan Sargent, the American, will get more than one season in F1. Admittedly, Albon is a much more experienced racer, but he's just beating him completely, lights out. And I don't know, with some crashes and just general bad showings, I don't think Logan Sargent will be back either. Unfortunate. Maybe they'll pick up Daniel, and Daniel will still be in F1, but just not at AlphaTauri.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of people who might be out of F1, Haas, which just continues to underperform. We've talked about team principal Gunther Steiner before. We think he should be fired. It's just the team regresses, it seems, year after year. I know Nico Hulkenberg, who's doing quite well there, was calling them out for not really, sort of developing the car, improving the car. I don't know what they're doing. But, people are saying Perez should be let go from Red Bull, forgetting what he did to help Max win his first championship. But, that he should be so far ahead of Lewis and Fernando in the standings that maybe they should get rid of Perez. I think if anyone deserves to get canned, it's Magnussen at Haas. He's been there for years and he is doing nothing. Nico came in and is clearly much better. I'm just not sure what Magnussen brings to the table other than he doesn't crash the car, which seems to be some sort of fetish that Gunther Steiner and Haas have.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's That team is hard, right? It's another one of those teams where realistically, the best you can do is like as a driver is maybe like 20 points a season. And it seems like what does the team really need? And I'm not sure that Magnussen is something that the team desperately needs in a driver. Um, it seems like they would be better off, finding somebody who can bring in money, who can bring in sponsorships or what have you. And then, maybe put in a good performance here and there. Find a way to get a few points. Make sure that they're not, last in the constructors championship, which
Yeah,
admittedly they're not right now, but most of that is due to Nico Hulkenberg.
yeah. I just
Um,
looked. Nico has 9 points. Not great, but in that Haas, maybe that's the best you can hope for. Magnussen has just two. Not even a fourth.
four
So
times better, four and a
yeah,
half times better.
that's no good.
I mean, it would be funny if Perez did get booted from Red Bull. If I was Haas, I would absolutely try to give him a contract immediately. Boot Magnussen, get Perez in the car. He
Uh,
can bring you money. He can bring you solid performances. I don't love Perez at Red Bull just because it's, the machine and he is but a simple driver, which isn't a bad thing. He's good. He's solid. He's in P2 in the championship, sure. But he's not challenging Max for anything. Um, I would like to see somebody challenge Max. But I think for Haas, a team like Haas or Alfa Romeo or, some of these sort of middling teams that need money and good drivers, Perez is perfect for them.
I agree. But speaking of challenging Max, Toto Wolff, team principal at Mercedes, and Lewis Hamilton, driver at Mercedes, have been just utterly petty in their remarks lately. And I want to say, I love it. Now, look, a grown man should absolutely never be petty. And if you are, make sure you are never petty in public. It diminishes you. Do not be a grown man who is petty. But as Max is setting records that might be unbeatable, and Red Bull is setting team records that might be unbeatable, what do we have? We have Toto Wolff going in front of the media saying, well, we don't even care about consecutive wins. Well, of course he does. Of course they all do. And then Lewis Hamilton goes to the media and says, well, my teammate Bottas was better than all of Max's. Well, we laugh at this. Valtteri Bottas is not better than Ricciardo and Gasly and Perez and Kvyat and
Signs.
Albon and Sainz. This is not true, and we all know this is not true. So they look petty, but I love it because not only is it fun drama, but I just think all those easy years at Mercedes, they had it easy, and I think it may have made them a little soft. And I think pettiness is the first step toward nastiness. And I think you got to get nasty. And so I'm really hoping that they pivot real quick from the pettiness into nastiness and just go after Red Bull with everything. Absolutely everything. That's what we all want to see. What do you think about that, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I'm surprised it's taken this long for that to kind of come out from Mercedes. Because, I mean, I think it was last week we were talking about Red Bull being wolves.
Right.
Frankly, Mercedes, for quite a long time, they were wolves. And then all of a sudden, they were wolves for so long. They were like, you know, this is easy. We've got this. And then new wolves came in, showed them up, took all their food, and they went, oh shit, what do we do? And it took them way too long to get to this point to be like, wait, we should maybe like fight back a little bit.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to them really working their asses off to get that spot back. They want it. And I feel like the last season and a half, 2 seasons, they haven't looked like they wanted it. And so, I think you're probably right. This is the first step. And I'm hoping that, this is quickly followed by action. And just balls to the wall, anger, fighting, everything.
Across the line, that's our segment where we predict our top 5 for the next race. The next race is not for 2 weeks. It will be in Singapore under the lights. And across the line, we choose our top 5. If we get them correct, that's 1 point. If we get them in the exact right spot, that's 3 points. Once a driver is taken, he's off the board. The other person can't choose them. I think that was the best I've ever explained across the line.
I think that works pretty well. So,
so what are the current standings?
So this was a pretty solid week. You are leading 51-46.
Okay, that's competitive though. 8 races to go. That's still good. Now, next race is Singapore. That was won by Sergio last year, with Charles and Carlos coming in second and third. I believe it was Perez, the 2 Ferrari, I think the 2 Mercedes, and then maybe Max. Memory's not so good on that one. But let's see. I think you go first, correct?
I do pick first. It's hard when you pick first to pick anybody other than Max at this point. I mean, 10 in a row, and it doesn't really look like he's gonna stop anytime soon. So I'll just roll with Verstappen.
Yeah, that's an easy one. Sergio won it last year. I'm going to go with Sergio win it again this year, and reminding us all that Red Bull may have the fastest car, but they also have 2 drivers. Second, we had some excitement there between Carlos and Charles at Monza this week. I'm going to go in Singapore with Charles.
Nice, yeah. Let's see. I think I will take I'll probably go with maybe Hamilton getting on the podium. And then Lando Norris following him up in the McLaren.
Nice. That McLaren seems that, they just seem 1 or 2 steps away. They've got the money. They've got 2 great young drivers. They just seem a couple steps away. I'm not sure if it's the leadership under Zach Brown or what, but so that would be nice to see Lando up on the podium. For third, I'm going to take Carlos, since you're dissing Ferrari in this race. And in fourth, I will take Lando's teammate, Oscar Piastri.
Nice. Well, I think the final 2 picks from me are probably fairly obvious, so I'm going to take Russell in that Mercedes. And then Fernando. Hard to keep him down for too long, so I think he'll have a solid race.
Awesome. So you have Max, Lewis, Lando, George, and Fernando for Singapore. I have Sergio, Charles, Carlos, Oscar, and I will take Bottas. Bottas is, he's a capable driver. He's just hanging in there. He's doing his thing, and we haven't really mentioned it much this year. Any crazy predictions, Patrick, for Singapore or the rest of the season?
It was a pretty dismal showing from Alpine this week. It was 1 week after an exciting podium for them. I am going to say that Alpine finishes the season in the Constructors' Championship with less than 100 points. They currently have 73.
Ooh, not good. I don't know what's been going on with Alpine. Maybe they can sell it. Maybe the nation of France will take it over and do something with it. I don't know. I have a big, crazy prediction. And it comes on the big news of the contracts at Mercedes. So a week ago or a couple weeks ago, I said I thought all these interviews Fernando Alonso was giving, sort of waxing nostalgic about his racing past, was his way of transitioning out of the sport, and that he would leave F1 at the end of this year. My big prediction, my crazy prediction, is that at the end of next year, Lewis Hamilton will leave. So I know he signed a 2-year deal through 2025, but I believe Max will win again. Red Bull will still be a step ahead. By 2025, George will be Lewis's equal. 2026, it's a whole new car regulations, a whole new car. I think Lewis Hamilton will hang it up at the end of 2024. All right. I want to remind our listeners, send your questions or comments to hardcompoundpod@gmail.com. We may read them on the show, and we definitely will read them. We also wish to thank you for listening to everybody's most beloved father and son F1 podcast. And we are lights out.
See ya. Thanks for listening.
That was a good show, son. I'm Labor Day weekend. I'm watching the race, having a good time. And as Max is setting all these records, it's like he's sort of the best driver in Formula One. He could go down as the best driver in Formula One history. We don't know that yet, but certainly one of the best. And as I said before, I think he's like the Michael Jordan of F1. He just wins. He's just locked in. No matter how good you are, while he's there, you're not going to win. Okay. But he's not Instagram friendly. He's not influencer friendly. He's not social media friendly. He's not of this age, which might hurt his earnings. And I was wondering, Jordan wasn't media friendly, really. But they put him in some commercials. But the big money came from the Air Jordans. And I was wondering, what could Max have that every kid would want all around the world? I don't think there is anything. But who knows? Maybe it's a cool cap. All the kids wear caps. I don't know. But I was trying to think of something. Maybe I get a cut of this. What do you think?
I'm thinking I don't know, like Elton John style sunglasses.
Ooh. That's eerie too, because I just lost my sunglasses. I bought sunglasses. One time in my life, I spent a lot of money on sunglasses. It was about 20 years ago, and I've kept them for 20 years. And this kid, this 20-year-old at work was like, "Hey, Mr. Hall, I dig your sunglasses." I was like, "Kid, these sunglasses are older than you are." And then I lost them. He put a hex on me. I had those sunglasses for 20 years. He put a hex on me. So I'm in the market for sunglasses. Max Jordan sunglasses. That would absolutely work.